Hey friends, this is Sheet and my guest today is Daniel Nistico, a professional classical guitarist, performing artist, educator and composer who's dedicated to make composing accessible for everyone. He created a method that allows anyone and everyone to get started and write their first composition, and he also offers courses and classes to guide aspiring composers. Now, today we're diving into some practical tips on how to get started, what are some of the key steps you need to follow, and also how to overcome challenges and fears. Now, this episode was sponsored by the Dario, but more on them later. All right, hey Daniel, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining me on Sheet today.
Hey Beatrix, it's awesome to join you and chat with you. I really look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me too. There's a lot of questions. I mean, I have a lot of questions about your practical methodology, about the whole composition process. But maybe before we jump into that, I also had a couple of topics in mind. You know, younger and older classical guitarists, it doesn't matter, but they often find it a bit more difficult or much more difficult to improvise and to start composing or coming up with original ideas in comparison to other style guitar players, like, I don't know, my fingerstyle acoustic guitar friends. They just do it so much more naturally and spontaneously. So I was wondering, what's your experience about that? Do you agree with this or not? And what do you think could be a reason? You know, if you agree with me, what do you think could be a reason for that?
That's a great question. We're jumping right in the deep end here.
Yeah.
All right, no mucking around. Okay, so good, very good question. I think I've definitely experienced that, and I definitely agree. Classical guitarists tend to not even consider improvising or composing. It doesn't even often it's not even an option. I think that there are several reasons. I did speak with Andrew York. I actually asked him a similar question, and it was great to get his answer. And he phrased it really well. He said that classical guitarists, you know, we're playing very difficult music, so we do have to devote a lot of time to getting the technical aspects, you know, clean and secure and everything. So that's one aspect. We're spending time, you know, playing very intricate music. I think another factor is, from what I've seen, it's in the actual teaching process, you know, whether you're learning from a teacher or you're learning online or however you're learning, there doesn't seem to be much training out there. So without training, it's very difficult. I mean, imagine if every guitarist was self-taught, it would be, you know, there are self-taught guitarists out there, there are self-taught composers out there, but training can help people to get started. And I think that's, you know, without that, it's very challenging. Without any kind of training, you don't really know where to start or anything like that. So so that's another thought. And then I think probably my final reason would be just psychologically. I think for a lot of people there's like a block, you know, or like a hurdle where they think, I'm just not born to be a composer. I'm not Mozart. I'll never be like Mozart and Bach and Barrios and Tárrega. And I think that stops a lot of people too. There's this kind of like psychological block. And one of my favorite quotes is by Mozart. He said that no one has devoted as much. I've actually memorized the quote. I've said it so many times. No one has devoted as much time to composition as I. There is not a famous master whose music I've not industriously studied through many times. You know, even the great composers were, you know, they were working hard at their craft. It wasn't necessarily just fully like natural. It didn't just like come to them. The dove from heaven whispering the beautiful melodies in their ears. I mean, that's really like, I think some people think that's how composing happens, but it's as much of a craft as it is inspiration.
When you want to compose on guitar, it's important to create the type of sound and color that you like and to have the perfect intonation as well. So you need to find the right strings for yourself. Luckily, this episode was sponsored by the Dario, my absolute choice of strings and accessories. And I personally use the XT high tension carbon strings they have. These sets have a special coating on them that provide extended lifetime to the strings, but the Dario offers a wide range of strings so everybody can find something that fits to them. Nylon, carbon, titanium, steel strings, poly strings, you name it. But I've also been a loyal user of their headstock tuner, this one, and capos for over 10 years. And I've also been using their microphone cables for years for all my music recordings that you can find on my YouTube channel. So huge thank you for the Dario for sponsoring this episode again. And now let's jump back to the episode. Sometimes I say to people that for a very, very long time, what held me back, personally me back from even trying to compose anything like a single, 8 bars of music, was that I was playing these masterpieces for so long, and I felt that nothing I can't write anything, I can't come up with anything that's worthy enough. So why would I even try to compose something if I could just dedicate that time to learn and to play something that's already proven to be valuable, that's obviously, masterpiece. Like, I am stealing time from all these valuable things, like learning a masterpiece. And I am being selfish for even trying to write something, because it's never going to be as good as a Bach prelude. You know what I mean? So I feel like what you're describing is exactly that. And it's very... in some way, it's comforting to hear. It's comforting to hear that you see that it's part of a problem for more people. What I picked up is that people are not really not encouraged, but they don't have access to proper training in improvisation or composition. Do you think that should be part of the curriculum of the classical guitar training, or is it something that people should find separately? Maybe.
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, I think first of all, people might want to evaluate for themselves what they want. Do they want to compose already? And that's an important question. For some people, like as I mentioned, it's not even on the table. It's not even an option. But if they're introduced to it, then maybe they'll love it. So it's hard to say. You don't want to force things on. I never want to force composition on anyone. But I think from what I've seen, when people give it a go, from everyone I've seen who's given it a try, has enjoyed it. So I think personally, I think we should at least give people a go at it. To see,
it's like to just spark curiosity, right? Just spark the curiosity and then see.
Exactly. And then if they like it, then there's like a pathway to kind of keep going and to level up. And just like we have, syllabus, exam syllabus, grade 1, grade 2 and all that. We could have a similar thing for composing, and that's kind of what I'm working on a little bit. So, so I think, and that, then all the other things you learn, like composing isn't just about composing, it's also about learning the craft of like how music works and how harmony works and structure in music. And I think you pick up on a lot of things when you start to compose. I think you start to get a bit more engaged with how music works. And so I think it can make you better as a player as well. So better as a sight reader, better as a player, improves your fretboard harmony. I mean, there's many advantages aside from just having a beautiful piece to play and appreciate that you wrote. There are many other advantages to composing. So I think yes, I believe it should be at least, some kind of introduction for most people would be great. It's not to say that everyone is going to be a Mozart. You don't not every guitar player is going to be a John Williams or a David Russell. We're all we all have different stages and different abilities and different desires. So we don't really apply it's interesting, how you said we want to play these masterpieces that have been composed, and I just wonder, sometimes we don't apply the same logic to the guitar itself. like performing. I don't think, unfortunately, everyone who plays the guitar is not going to be a virtuoso guitarist. So it's kind of like the same
Right.
logic, because everyone who composes is not necessarily going to be a Mozart or a Bach as well. But it doesn't mean it. That's not always the goal. You know, maybe there are other reasons to compose. There are other reasons to play the guitar. It could just be for self-enjoyment. It could be just to play for your family and friends, and to play intermediate music and just enjoy. You know, it's like it doesn't always, you don't always have to go like to the max. You know, so
I see, but at the same time, I also think that when someone decides to learn to play guitar, they they may feel like that it's easier to get good at it because there's a syllabus, or there are available methods that you can use. It's like, it's a path that's been, already, it's already there. Like, people already figured this out, how to do it. Learning how to play guitar has a more clear direction, and that's why when they jump into it, they have the assumption that if I take this path and if I do all the steps the right way, I'm going to get good at guitar. And I think nobody wants to feel that, when nobody wants to feel like they will suck at the thing. They everybody starts doing something because they want to feel some kind of achievement with it, right? It's funny because I feel like when somebody is composing, or somebody, it could hold people back from composing, that they don't want to sound badly. They don't want their composition to sound bad in comparison to great masters. So that's where I think the two things can be completely different. But going back to your point for a second, the Mozart quote, it's so funny how we kind of forget that masters also study masters. And in comparison, in painting, it's like, it's a huge thing. It's called master study, when you just take a piece from somebody else and you try to copy not just the thing they painted, but like understanding their technique and everything. And we don't really do that, right?
yeah. Well, composers used to do that. They used to copy out the scores of other composers, and that was how that's kind of probably one equivalent of that. And there are probably other methodologies that composers were using in the past that maybe have gotten a little bit forgotten about now. Certain templates and forms and structures and progressions and all these things that in a similar way to guitar playing, we break it down. There's all these aspects: slurring, barring, shifting, tremolo, arpeggios, right? In composition, there can be a similar way to break down all those elements and work on them. I call it developing your compositional chops, right? Just like we have guitar chops that we want to develop, there are also compositional chops we can develop too. So,
Can you name just a few?
yeah, I mean, for example, melodic development, like sequences, inversion, retrograde, augmentation, diminution. So certain ways of manipulating a melody. That's a really great starting point, because most people can come up with a melody, but then they don't really know what to do with it next. And so finding ways to develop your melody, and these are very set ways. Once you've written the melody, a sequence is a pretty strict process, that you apply to what you've already done. That's the craft. You've produced your creativity, and then the craft will take over to a degree.
I
And
see.
yeah.
I see. I was just wondering, if could you maybe show an example to how this would look in practice? Like, if we have a short, simple melody, and these alterations, the chops, the way you
Yeah.
described it.
Yeah, for sure. So if we take a scale, I was just doing this yesterday with a student. If we take a scale like a simple G major scale in the first position, if I wanted to try and create a little melody and then sequence it, I could just go something like that, right? And so that's a sequence going up. I could do a sequence going down. That's just a very, very quick example. And actually, when people start to do that, these little threads, little ideas start to come about. Because that sounds like an exercise, honestly. That's, that's not really a melody per se, but it has the seeds, it has the potential for someone to extract ideas or to grab onto something, to find a thread, to find a hook, and to play with that, and to get the creativity going. Because again, like you said, it's like people don't know even where to start or anything like that. So that's just one very, very small example of a compositional chop that you can try. It's probably easier on paper as well, because I'm doing it on the guitar. To do it on the spot on the guitar can be a bit more challenging for some people. Some people are very capable though, so it just depends on the person. Some people will be better on paper and actually thinking about it, seeing the notes visually and all that. So yeah.
This example really shows how you can start from just a simple melody and build up from that. And it got me thinking a little bit, because composing, for me, I believe it's a very personal process, and you can start from many different ways. So you can start with picking a key. You can start with, and you just pick a key and you try to stick with that and figure out something that sounds good in that key. You can also just start with a chord progression without thinking much about the actual key, just looking for chords that sound good. And then you can start maybe with melody. And that's three things I can just, I don't know, those are the three things I can think of. But at the same time, I feel like maybe coming up with a melody first is more beginner friendly, while the other two parts require you to have at least a basic level of understanding of how music theory works, right? So what do you think, how people should start? Like which one is the good way to start composing, and what's a good point in your music studies to start composing?
Hey, once again, a very good question. Yeah.
I'm on fire today.
You're on fire. That's great. No mucking around, really. Heavy stuff. No, it's good. Yeah, the way that I encourage people to get started is kind of a combination of everything you mentioned, and put into what I call a template or a canvas. And yeah, it depends on the level of the canvas, the level of the template, as to what sort of details you'll be dealing with. But if you just start with melody, you might still get stuck, because even with melodic development, you might not necessarily know how to structure your melody into a complete composition. So you want to have some kind of structure, meaning like ternary form, like A, B, A, or binary form, A, B, something like that. That's a very good starting point. And I even like lay out the bars. So you see like 4 bars in a line. You might see 2 lines of 4 measures, so 8 measures total. That could be your A section. And then you'll see the same for the B section. 2 lines of 4 bars, 8 measures total. So you got 16 bars total. It's like Adelita or Ludwig. I think they're about 8 bars for the A section, 8 bars for the B section, then you repeat the A section again. So starting out with some kind of structure, because then your ideas can fit somewhere and they can flow, and there's a kind of logic and structure to it all. And then you can choose your keys as well. You mentioned keys, that's great. Yeah. So then but there's a bit of a logic to the keys. If you're going to change key, for example, you might start in C major and then in the A section, and then in the B section go to the relative minor, for example, to A minor. Very, very common structure. So we're taking these structures, and they do occur time and time and time and time again, and they still occur time and time and time again, even with modern composers. So forms like that, ternary and binary ternary, the types of keys we tend to see. There's even ways to structure a melody. There's something called a parallel period. Maybe people want to Google it, because it's a bit hard to explain it quickly.
Parallel period. Can you just?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry to stop you. I just wanted to ask you to give us a short demo.
A demo is probably better. So a parallel period, a great example, one of my favorites is Adelita, has a parallel period. You have this, oops, let me drop D. You have this question, which is 4 bars, 3, 4, and then we repeat. 2, 3. So we have a question and an answer. They're both the same number of measures long, 4 bars each, and they both repeat a certain amount of that. In that case, it's a lot. It's about 3 measures of each one is repeated. So you basically, from a compositional perspective, Taraga composed 3 measures, and he basically, what we would call in the modern day, copied and pasted them in measures 4, 5, and 6. 5, 6, and 7. So that you get that kind of symmetry in the melody. And this type of phrase structure, once you're aware of it and you study music, you see it again and again and again. It's probably at least 75% of the music that I've studied.
Wow.
In many styles, modern, jazz, pop music, many styles of music use this kind of phrase structure called a parallel. It's not the like most colorful name for a phrase, parallel period. It's sort of a bit dry, but that's what it is. It's a period, meaning like a sentence, like a full, like we say in Australia, full stop, a period, the end of a sentence. So it's like what forms a full idea, melodic idea, and very often a parallel period will create a section of music. So that parallel period in Adalita creates the A section as well. So there's a lot of structure. There's a lot of structure in that, and that's another example there. The parallel period is really great, and that's something else that you can put into your template. So you've got your structure A, B, A, whatever you want to do, or A, B, and then you've got your keys picked out already, and then you've got your parallel periods worked out already, and now the process becomes much less overwhelming. You've got these boundaries, you've got these limitations. Sometimes people
I love limitations. I'm all for limitations. It's so freeing, so liberating. I'm all for rules, recipes, plans. I'm here for it.
Awesome. Well, that's exactly what a template is. It's like basically a blank score, but it's got all of these limitations for you to work with. And just like you're saying, it sounds contradictory or whatever, but the more limitations you have, often the more freedom you get. Because if you don't have limitations, then you don't know what to do. You don't know where to start, where to go. And even, I think an experienced composer is probably has lots of these limitations. They probably have more limitations. They've learned all of these formulas. They know all these things, parallel periods. It's second nature. It's like intuitive. Once you become really experienced, it becomes intuitive to the point where you can even improvise these things. Imagine improvising. It's all visualized, right? You've got this template in your head. You got A sections in this key. I'm going to do a parallel period. That'll be my A section. Then I'll go to the B section in this key. I'll do another parallel period, make it more sad sounding, and then go back to the A section again and repeat it. And that level of structure and limitations is very, very helpful.
That's crazy. And at the same time, it always looks like spontaneous, like so free and so fluid. And it reminds me of drawings and paintings, when some people can draw faces so effortlessly. It looks like their hand is just dancing on the paper. And it looks very spontaneous. It looks very, very natural and free and effortless. But at the same time, we don't see how much structured preparation and learning went into that. And I feel like with music, it's somewhat similar. If you enjoyed this episode so far, please consider to support my work on a monthly basis on Patreon. Patreon allows me to create more videos like this one, podcast episodes, educational content, and music videos as well. So if you like my work, head over to my Patreon page and check it out, and thank you so much for considering to support me. As you were talking about structure and rules and everything, it kind of reminded me of when I used to have this phase when I only tried to wear the same t-shirt. I was having, a very stressful time period, so I bought like 20 gray t-shirts. And it was very helpful for me. That was it was one less decision making every day. And then later on, I kind of ditched that thing, but now I'm not stressed. But if I ever have a very heavy and overwhelmed time period, maybe I will just use my 20 gray t-shirts again. Doesn't matter. But the point is, if you have a solid structure, it can put you into a little box and kind of makes you repeat the same thing. You get comfortable with certain structures and plans and recipes, and you just repeat the same thing over and over again. Do you think it's a threat for in composition, in composing, and in the method you're introducing to people?
Very good question again. I don't think it's a threat at first because in order for someone to get started, I think they need that guidance. I mean, it's really just like in playing. If you learn an instrument, you're not going to give someone the liberty to the license to play something that's really, really advanced. Which is kind of the equivalent of letting go of some of these limitations for someone and getting them to be, I guess, more original, you could say, more unique, develop their own voice, their own language. What I found is that a lot of people already have their own language to a degree when they first start, and the limitations, the templates and things is just a way for them to harness their creativity. But yes, it's a very good consideration because at a certain point, you don't want to sound too generic and recycle, sound too similar to a lot of the music that we've already heard. So it's important I think it is important to develop our own originality. And I think that goes back to what Mozart said, studying famous masters. I think the more music you study, and I had the great opportunity to speak with Andrew York about this, and he has such a broad, diverse range of musical influences. So I think if you expand your range of musical influences, don't just listen to guitar music. That's what Andrew York said, and I agree totally with that. Listen to piano music and symphonies and rock and roll and jazz and and find what you like, and then you can blend that in, and fuse things in your own unique way. But you'll probably always have structure behind you still, because there's another quote by Brahms. He said, "Without craftsmanship, inspiration is a mere reed blowing in the wind." So
wow.
there has to be some sort of craft, some sort of structure. I mean, music, a definition of music sometimes is organized sound, right? So that organization is such a crucial aspect. So whatever you end up doing, no matter how original you start to become, you'll probably have some kind of structure. And some of the music, like Schoenberg's music, is so structured that it actually can sound, some people would say, chaotic, right? When you start to structure too much, so that there can be a balance between structure and freedom and knowing the rules, bending the rules, breaking the rules, all these things. I think it is worth considering, especially if you're going to continue your journey as a composer, to be original. Now, if you want to start composing and you want to be original immediately, I think it will be harder. I think it's possible. It's possible, but I think it will be a bit more challenging. That's my experience. Maybe there are other methods out there that can encourage people to to find a more unique voice earlier on, but yeah. Okay,
I see. So, but this also, once again, this also implies that you need to have experience in guitar to some degree. So if you started to play guitar yesterday, maybe learning to compose is a little bit too early for you today, right? So that's or not. What do you think? Okay, what's the right time?
So one of the ways that people used to learn composition, which I don't think is done today as much, is called model composition.
Can you repeat that? Model?
Model composition, like modeling, like not copying, but it's sort of, So if someone could play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, let's say that maybe not day one of but like they're a complete beginner. Well, you could actually take that, even if someone has just started playing, and I have done this. You can take something like that and they can compose something. They can compose a single line melody in that key using those same notes because they're modeling what they already know. That's the beauty of modeling. You're drawing on what you already know. If you only know one song, you can use that one song as inspiration to compose your own song. If you know, like many classical guitarists, if you know many songs, many pieces, you can draw on all of them. You can study them. Again, back to that Mozart quote, not a famous master whose music I've not industriously studied. If you're playing the Chacon or you're playing Asturias or whatever it is, that's a inspiration, to draw on. You could model. You could take. Yeah. Right. So that's
Right.
quickly just like grabbing that little hook of Asturias and starting to model it, and then then I can refine. I could go in mine if I want. Just something like that, and so I'm just using it as inspiration, and then you've got the B section, the beautiful this. So then you can model that, and you might start off very, very close, something like that. I'm just improvising again. I'm just loosely taking what is done in Asturias, and I'm borrowing that idea, modeling it, and I could make a piece very quickly now because I've got the structure, I've got a theme, a hook, of something to flow with based on a pre-existing piece. So
That's crazy. I'm just really, I'm so impressed. I know this is your job. I know this is what you're doing, but it's just so impressive to see how quickly it can work in practice, like in the real time. You pick an idea and you can model it. There's there has to be a really fine line between modeling and copying something, I guess. That sounds like something really, really difficult to distinguish or to touch on. Is modeling something you're also teaching to your composing students?
oh yeah, I am teaching that, definitely.
And
But
how do you avoid them to become like copycats?
well, for some people, they need to stick very closely, and they might sound very similar. Again, composition is not always about composition. It can be about learning a craft, or so that, yeah, their piece might sound very similar to the original, but it's just, let's call it an exercise. For other people, for most people, I would say, naturally they will have a desire, an instinct to sound different and to put something of their own voice and to change the template in certain places. And I just see that happening naturally. If it doesn't, I would encourage them to vary things, maybe by, for example, flipping things around, like opposing what the model piece is doing. So if Asturias is in minor, do yours in major. If it's fast, slow, fast, go slow, fast, slow. So you can take certain elements and just oppose them, do the opposite, and that can sound different to the model piece. Then you can do things like changing the harmony. You can, you don't have to follow the exact harmonic progression. You can change the harmonic progression. If a melody is rising, you can go down. If a melody is going down, you can rise. So that's one approach. It's again a very good question, and it's very important. But I think in terms of it's again, I make a parallel. I can make a parallel with playing. We tend to model great players, right? And there's not really, to a degree, especially early on in people's learning an instrument. When people learn an instrument, I think it's fine to try and play like David Russell or play like John Williams, right? Eventually, yeah, maybe you want to find more of your own style, but there's something, we're modeling great players, modeling great composers. We learn a lot. We learn like good habits. We learn good techniques that then we can use in our own way. I've learned a lot from studying great players, right? And I think we kind of cherry pick a little bit, right? We say like, I like the way he does that. I like the way she does this.
Yeah.
And I think it can be very similar for composing. We can cherry pick around like different composers, different styles, and eventually sort of start to create our own one. But I think it will be for most people, it will be a bit of a journey, like an evolution, just as it would be for a player. I think a lot of maybe some players will start out and they'll be quite unique to begin with. But I think for most people, it's not that way. It's an evolution. It'll take time for them to find their voice.
And what's your experience? How long it takes, like just on average, how long it takes for your students to develop a voice?
I never thought about it before in terms of like a definitive period of time. It probably depends on the person. So some people will find it much faster, and some people maybe will take a little bit longer. But from my experience, from what I've seen, maybe after they've composed maybe like a handful of pieces, then they'll start to I think intuitively put in their own desire to make changes and tweaks, and because they have a bit of experience then, right? Once you've composed 5-10 pieces, something like that, you've got experience at like following structure and what happens if I do this, and some people might make little changes. But then once you've got a bit more experience, then the what happens if can be a bigger, can have bigger ramifications. What happens if I change to this whole section to something else, or what happens if I change the harmony completely? You can start to, I think, be a bit more flexible when you've got a bit more experience. It's hard to put a precise amount of time on that though.
Maybe it's not the right question. I was just wondering if you have any, like, if you notice some similarities or just anything, any data on that. But okay, I want to jump back to that canvas thing for a second. Let's see if I understand it correctly, okay? Because it was maybe not very clear to me. So let's see if I get the point. So the canvas is like a set of guidelines, a set of guidelines, and a canvas is what you put all your preparation on, like preparation in terms of what's going to be the form of the piece, what's going to be the key of the piece, melody, structuring, techniques, for example. So what goes on the canvas? What goes on the canvas before the work can really begin?
Yeah. As much as you want or as little as you want, really.
Oh no.
Yeah, it can be very, very detailed, very, very specific, down to every single chord is mapped out. And you can do that based on a pre-existing piece. So you can actually take a pre-existing piece and create a canvas, create a template from that by seeing what is the composer doing in every single measure. What is he doing with the melody, the harmony? What is he or she doing with the melody, the harmony, the form, the keys, all of that? So you can put in as much detail as you want. You can change as many things as you want, but having that starting point, I think, especially for people who are not experienced at composing, seems to be very helpful. So basically, the canvas is it's like blank sheet music, right? Okay. But you actually, one important step, it sounds like kind of like not very important, but one important step is to actually lay out the bars, to lay out the measures so that you've got 4 measures in front of you, and then you've got another 4, and then that's usually going to be your A section. And there's something visually very neat about that. So you actually, so that's one of the aspects. You've got the manuscript. The sheet music is arranged visually, so you can see the structure of the music very clearly, and then you'll basically be annotating the sheet music. You can put your A section, this key. You can put the chord progression in if you want to. You can say parallel period. You can say sequence the melody here. You can say you can say perfect cadence at the end. As much detail as you want. There could be suspensions. There could be changes of texture. There could be all sorts of things based on whatever your. So usually you create a template based on a pre-existing piece. You don't have to. You can create your own template based on whatever you want to do. So if you want to be a bit more unique and imaginative and creative, perhaps, then you could even create your own template. And it's something I highly suggest. And the template can be, I was talking a lot of detail. It can also be much more open. You can say, I'm going to have 3 sections, and this section's based on my childhood. This section's based on my teenage years, and this section's based on my adult years, and you try to and you just based on feeling. There's still a structure. There's still something for you to, because I think what a lot of people do is they just start, just like, oh, I'll play a melody and then I'll write it down, and then. But it's you don't really.
And then you go, now what?
Now what? Exactly. And then you go, now what?
That's me. That's what I do usually,
Yeah.
and I have no idea what's going on.
Right. So so if you have a structure to fit that melody into, then I think it's kind of like what you were describing earlier with playing. When we play, there's there's almost like a gamification to it. It's like we know we can achieve things when we play a certain way, and I feel like a template is a similar thing. It gives you like objectives, right? So you're basically writing down some objectives, and then when you compose, you're writing towards those objectives. And when you complete the objective, you kind of feel a sense of satisfaction. You can always go back and revise. This is the beautiful thing about composition, is you can always go back and revise and change things. It's never stuck. It's your piece. You can do with it what you want anytime. You can make 20 years later, and this happens sometimes. 10 years later, 20 years later, you might make a change to your composition, right?
Right. This is funny to hear, because I believe there's nothing more intimidating than looking at a blank piece of paper. Just looking at it, and it's looking back at you, and you're like, okay, now what do we do with this one? And it's blank. And putting down the first note, I can't tell you how many times I've had that when I had this piece of paper, and I'm like, okay, let's just start. And I wrote down the first note, and it felt so uncomfortable that I immediately erased the first note. And it was just one note. And sometimes I don't even know what was wrong with it, but just the whole thing, that it was just so uncomfortable, starting with an open word, right? Blank page, and having this template once again. It also, what it reminds me of, something I kind of have going on with my YouTube channel. So I used to feel a lack of structure, because all I did was that I told myself that, okay, I need to record, I'm going to make this video, I don't know, a video about bar chords, whatever. And it was so broad, the whole, the task I set, it's just so broad. I used to procrastinate making videos because of this for so long, because I didn't have an outline, I didn't have a plan. And now I have, like, if I want to make a video, it consists of 10 or 15 sub tasks, and I just go one by one and one by one, and what you're describing sounds exactly the same. And it sounds, for some people, it may sound like it's losing the spontaneity, but it's just so liberating to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's really cool.
It's a really good parallel, I think. Yeah, making content, and you could even say with content. I mean, I get inspired by content like the content you make, and that helps me to. I can model what you do. I can model what I see to a degree. Say, what sort of camera angles are they using? Looks great. What's the lighting like? You know, what's their script like? What's the duration of everything? So it's a very similar kind of process there. I mean, we can use modeling in many creative endeavors. Yeah, making content, drawing, visual arts, and music and composing
Anything,
as well.
really. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
anything. Okay, maybe let's finish this amazing, super useful conversation with a little step-by-step idea. So people who are watching us, people who click on this podcast, and want to compose their first piece of music, what are some practical steps they can follow, in your opinion?
Well, what I can offer is, if it's okay, I'd like to give your audience a couple of templates that they
Oh
can use.
yeah, we'd love that. We'd
Because
love
then
that.
I could explain things, but I don't know how sticky that, the stickiness of that. I think it'll be hard to kind
Okay.
of take an explanation of what to do. But if you actually have the template, and these templates are, they come in different formats, so you can get the PDF. Or you can get the ones that you can actually open in a notation program like MuseScore. MuseScore I recommend because it's free, and it's good. So you can open this template up, and you can actually, you've got the canvas, the template is all there, and you can just pop the notes in. If you have the PDF, you sort of have to still like kind of create the template for yourself. So,
I
but
see.
yeah.
That would be cool. That's great. Yeah, we'd love that, and thank you so much.
But if I had to give a process, I can kind of, I can give, a more general
Yeah, more
suggestion.
general. That sounds
Yeah, more
good.
general suggestion. Okay, so the first suggestion is to make a plan first. So make a plan first, whether it's your own or it's based on something else. Plan first. Don't start writing a note down until you've got the plan done first. That's my first suggestion. The second suggestion is write a melody first. Don't worry about anything else, just the melody. Right? So map out your melody through your plan. I mean, if you feel tempted to start adding notes here and there, that's okay, but try to focus just on getting the melody complete. The third step is to harmonize the melody. So then you can add bass notes and chords and things to the melody. And then the fourth step would be to edit and refine. So just go through and see if any changes you want to make. You want to revoice a chord, make it easier to play, less barring, more advanced, whatever you want to do, add slurs, add dynamics, articulations, all that kind of thing, phrase markings, whatever you want to do. So that's the four-step process that I've used, and it seems to work for a lot of people. So plan, melody, harmony, edit, and refine.
Incredible. That's so good. Sounds very simple. Now as you say it, it sounds just so simple. I know it's not. I know it's not. And there's a lot of hard work and time and practice to put into it. But it's just so good to have something to grab on, to have a sense of structure. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. This was very insightful, and I feel like I'm ready to just jump on my guitar, not to compose, but to start planning. I'm not going to play a single note. I just learned it today. I'm not jumping on the guitar. I'm jumping next to the guitar to start planning, and then I will start composing.
It'll be
Yeah, thank you
amazing.
so
Awesome to
much.
see you compose a piece. Love to see that. Love to see that happen. If here to answer questions anytime for you or any other anyone else listening. Happy to answer their questions anytime. If I may give just a closing remark, we spend a lot of time. Well, I spend a lot of time speaking about structure, and composing does go, I think, to a deeper place as well. It comes from, it's not just from the mind, but it's from the heart, from the soul, the spirit as well, I would say. and from feelings and from memories and all sorts of things. It's a very multi, sensory experience in a way. And I think it's really important to think about what is the purpose? What are you trying to communicate as well? Composition can be very powerful. When you write a piece of music, it's what we listen to music for. We don't want to listen to it and be like, oh, they're doing a parallel period here and going to this key here. It's like I just want to sit there and feel just be washed away by the music, the emotions and the feelings that the music brings, whatever it's communicating. And sometimes it's extremely powerful stuff that music can communicate. So I just want to encourage you and everyone listening to, when you do write, to also think about that, to think about what is this music about? What's it communicating? Because that gives purpose to everything that you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is so important. I'm glad you pointed it out. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this aspect, because when we focus so much on guidelines and templates, it's easy. It's really, really easy to get lost in the structure of creating something. That's great. My final question to you is where people can learn from you and learn from you how to compose, how to get started with composition, and in what form do you educate people?
Yep, great question. I think if you Google the creative classical guitarist, people should be able to find my website, which is creativeclassicalguitarist.com. And there you can either join. I've got an online kind of community online school kind of thing, which is like an app. It's got got all the courses and materials and everything on there. There are also courses if you want to just dip your toes more into things. There are courses as well. You can book in a free consultation with me as well from that website if people have specific questions they want to ask. I'm happy to answer. So.
That's awesome. So you offer group lessons, and I've seen you also have an online course on composing that people can take individually, and then they can just sign up for just a consultation and see where they can move from there with you. Sounds good. We're gonna leave all these links in the description or in the show notes, depending on if you guys are listening or watching. And Daniel, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. I feel we learned a lot, and we're ready to get started composing now.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be on your show, and thank you for all the great content you do. You're really helping to spread classical guitar, I think, to a much wider audience. You do great work, so really appreciate everything you do as well.
Thank you. That's great.